All right, everybody, it's just a couple minutes after 3 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and start. My name is Liz. I work with On1 Software, and today, hopefully, you are here for a webinar all about how to use the Lightroom and Aperture edition of the Perfect Photo Suite. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about the whole suite, and then we're going to jump right into talking about all the different modules and how to use them. So if you're unaware of what the Photo Suite is, you haven't used it yet, or maybe you have it and you're not 100% sure how everything works, it's a program that allows you to edit your images, and it integrates into Lightroom and Aperture. Plus, you can use it as a standalone program. And it includes all of the best tools, and we've designed them specifically for photographers. Whether you do it professionally or whether it's just a hobby, you can focus on your photography without spending a lot of time post-processing. So it comes with 7 different modules. I'm going to talk to you about all of them. And the first one is going to be Perfect Effects 4. And it allows you to stylize your images with a whole bunch of beautifully professionally created effects. So you can add popular things like HDR stylings to your images. You can add really cool retro effects. You can even finish your images off with things like textures, borders, and frames, and you can combine multiple effects together to create some pretty amazing possibilities. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into Lightroom, and I'm going to show you how this works. So inside my Lightroom library, there are 2 different ways that you can get to the suite. You can either right-click on your image or control-click, and if you go down to Edit In, you can select your module from there, or you can go up to the File menu, go down to Plugin Extras, and you'll see all of the different modules there as well. Now, a lot of times, I like to start out going through the Plugin Extras menu, and you'll see right up at the top, there's an option for selecting Perfect Photo Suite 7. And it allows you to access our base program, which is Perfect Layers, so that if you want to, you can do some quick retouching before you place it into Perfect Effects. So that's what I'm going to do with this image here. And you'll see why in just a second. When I select Perfect Photo Suite, it's going to pop me into Perfect Layers first. And you'll see right down at the bottom of this image, there are all of these little pilings in the water, and they're kind of distracting to this image. I want it to be a little bit more simple. So before I add any effects to it, I want to get rid of all of these really quickly. And inside Perfect Layers, we have a retouch brush. And the retouch brush allows me to go in and basically remove any unwanted elements. So once I have it selected, all I need to do is resize my brush, and I'll just click and paint over these pilings down at the bottom of this lake. And you'll see it's really easy. All I'm doing is just clicking and dragging on all of these different posts, and they go away. So now that I've done my retouching, what's really cool is all of these different products are integrated together. So instead of having me go back into Lightroom and then go back into Perfect Effects, all I need to do is just click on Effects right up at the top, and it's going to put me into Perfect Effects. Now here on the left-hand side, this is where the effects library is. And you see you've got all of these different options that you can play around with, all these different categories. All I need to do to open one is just go ahead and click on a category, and it's going to show me all of the different presets, all the different effects that are going to be underneath that category. Now I'm going to go up and I'm going to select the contrast category. I want to add a little bit of clarity and a little bit of contrast here. And you'll see right up at the top, there's an option called auto contrast. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that, and it does everything kind of automatically for me, so I don't really have to do that much. Now, I really like this effect, and I know that this is something I'm probably going to want to use on other landscapes that I might bring in here. So you'll see right down on the bottom right-hand corner of this effect, there's a little flag, and what this allows me to do, so I'll go ahead and I'll click on that. It fills that flag in, and what it's done is it's popped it over to my favorites library. So I'm in the full effects library right now, but if I go over to favorites, these are all of my favorite presets and effects, the ones that I know I like to use on a regular basis. And you'll see right here is that auto contrast effect that we just added in here. So this is a really great way to work inside Perfect Effects. It's my favorite way to work inside Perfect Effects because it makes everything a lot easier. You can get in and out really quickly without having to worry about trying to remember where all the different effects are. So figure out which ones you really like to use and just go straight to your favorites library. Now, the other thing that you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's this effect options pane that's popped up. And it allows me to basically tweak this preset or tweak this effect a little bit more if I want to. So it's already done that auto contrast. However, I also want to add in a little bit of clarity. And you'll see right down here, there's a clarity slider. And all I need to do is just take that and move it over to the right, and you'll see it's kind of crisping up some of those details down here in this sky, or in this horizon line. So I can go in and I can basically tweak this preset and I can make it my own. I used it as a good baseline, but I want to change it just a little bit for this image. So I'm also going to go and I'm going to take my highlight slider and I'm going to move that over to the right, and it's going to darken the sky just a little bit. Now what I want to do is I want to take this image and I want to create kind of a vintage postcard look to it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to click on the add button right here. And this is the effects stack. And the effects stack, this is where I'm allowed to stack multiple effects together. And you'll see right down at the bottom, my original image is still there. And right on top, that auto contrast layer has been applied. So when I click on the add button, it adds an empty effect layer so I can apply a brand new effect. So this makes it really easy to combine multiple effects together to basically build your own presets. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and close that category, and I'm going to scroll down to one of the texture categories here. Now you'll see there are all of these different categories, and we could go through and we could try and figure out what I might be looking for. But instead, I'm just going to go up to my search bar up at the top. Now the search bar allows me to search through the entire effects library. So I know that I'm looking for something that's going to warm up the photo. So I might type in, say, the word yellow. I want kind of a yellowed paper effect to it. So I'll just type in a word right up at the top in my search bar, and then I can scroll through, and you'll see right down here at the bottom, there's this yellowed paper dark texture. And it's kind of like a paper texture that's applied to your image. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click and apply that to my photo here. Now, another thing that's really cool about the effects library and about Perfect Effects is on the right-hand side in the effects stack, I can also reduce the amount of this effect. So it's a little too strong on this image. That texture is really cool, but it's a little too dark. So I'll just go ahead and I'll take this amount slider and move it over to the left just a little bit. So it softens kind of that yellowing effect, so it brightens up the photo just a little bit. Now the last thing I want to do to kind of finish off this postcard effect is I want to add a border. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on the add button. It'll add another empty layer there. And then I'm going to go ahead and close out of this search option and go to my borders categories. We've got a couple here. I'm going to start out in the antique category. And right down here is one of my favorite borders. It's called Antique Rounded. I'll go ahead and click and add that here. And it applies this really nice kind of soft yellowed, almost 1970s film style border to the image, which is really cool. I'm going to go ahead and click to save this as another favorite because I know I'm going to want to use this again. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to save this as a preset. So we've gone through and we've combined 3 different layers here. We did a contrast layer, we did a texture layer, and we did a border layer. And I know that the next time I upload another photo and I want to create that same postcard effect, I want to be able to add all 3 of those layers together just like I did. So if I go up to the preset menu, I can go down and I can save my preset. So I can go ahead and I'll give it a name. So we'll call it postcard look. I can place it into a category, and you'll see I've got some separated categories here. I could put it in landscape presets, portrait presets. I'm going to place it in the vintage film category here. I'll go ahead and type in a creator, and I can also type in a description too. And sometimes I like to do this so I can remember why I made the presets in the first place. If you're like me and you make a lot of presets and you're very forgetful, descriptions are really helpful because you can kind of remember what this preset did or why you liked to use it. So once I'm done and I go ahead and click on create, that preset pops over to my presets library right next to my effects and my favorites libraries. You'll see these are all the categories that you just saw, and I can open up vintage film. You'll see I've got a ton of different presets in here already, and then right there is my postcard look. So now the next time I add a photo into Perfect Effects, and I know I really liked that postcard look, I can just click and apply it to my image. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cancel out of this photo here, and I want to move on and I want to talk to you about perfect black and white. And Perfect Black and White is our black and white processing software, and it allows you to access a special set of professionally created presets just for black and white processing. Plus, you have access to a whole bunch of special tools and brushes that we created just for black and white processing. So you can instantly achieve some really beautiful classic looks of black and white photography. You can take an image that would otherwise pop out of your digital camera and be a little dull, and you can give it a really nice punch. You can also reproduce some really great vintage styles using some old school darkroom techniques that we've reproduced inside Perfect Black and White as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another image, open up a portrait here. And this time, all I'm going to do is just right click on my image, go to Edit In, and select Perfect Black and White. Now, what's really cool about using Lightroom is what it asks you to do is what type of copy you'd like to edit your image. So I always like to do this top one right up here. It's called Edit a Copy with Lightroom Adjustments. And it allows me to always make sure that I copy over and create a new file that I'm going to edit. So I never destroy my original image. So once I have Edit a Copy with Lightroom Adjustments selected, I'll go ahead and just click on Edit, and it's going to pop me into Perfect Black and White. Now, black and white is going to be really similar at first to Perfect Effects. On your left-hand side, you've got your different categories that you can open up. You'll see you've got a search bar up at the top, you've got your favorites library and your presets library here. So very similar on this side. You can twirl open any of these categories, and you can take a look at all the different presets underneath, and you'll see if they've all got flags. You can save them as favorites. So I'm going to open up my favorite category, which is the 19th century processes category. And I always really like this part, a Perfect Black and White. We went in and we reproduced a lot of effects that are really difficult to create today. So if you ever made something like an ambrotype or a calotype, you have to use really toxic chemicals. So instead of having to go into the darkroom, you can go in here and you can test out some of these cool looks. So I'm going to use one of my favorites, which is called a calotype glass negative, and it adds this really soft, warm, chocolatey effect to an image. It looks really beautiful on wedding portraits. So once I've applied it to my photo, one of the best parts about the effects and presets here in Perfect Black and White is usually they get you about 90% of the way there. However, now I can go in and I can tweak this preset a little bit more on the right-hand side. And we've got all these different panes you can work with. Right up at the top, you've got a tone pane, so you can do some basics. So I might, for this image, increase the contrast just a little bit so I can bring her silhouette out a little bit more. Underneath, you've got the color response pane. Now, what's really cool about the color response pane is the original color information from this photo is still there. Basically, what's happened is we've created kind of a black and white layer that goes on top of your colored photo. So if I turn my preview on and off, there's a little preview button in the bottom left-hand corner. My original image, all of that color information is still there. So what I can do is I can go in and I can edit each one of these color channels and lighten and darken any of them. So I'll take this yellow slider and I'll move that over to the right, and you'll see it's kind of brightening up that warm color of the walls. Now, another way that you can access that color information is by using our targeted brightness tool. So go ahead and select that, and it accesses all of the color information underneath that black and white layer. All you need to do is click on anywhere in the image and just drag to the right to lighten or drag to the left to darken that color. So you see it's really easy. I can just go in and I can basically kind of click around this whole photo and I can lighten and darken whole parts of the image in kind of big sweeps, which is really nice. Now, right up above the targeted brightness tool, we've got a couple other tools which are unique to Perfect Black and White, and they're really cool. Right up at the top, there's the brightness brush, and the brightness brush basically allows you to burn or dodge if you're a darkroom person, or lighten and darken certain parts of your image. And you'll see right up at the top, there's something called the perfect brush. And the perfect brush is new with Suite 7, and we're really excited about it. It's an edge detection brush that you can use to basically be more selective about which parts of your image you want to change. So right now, you'll see right up at the top, I've got my mode set to lighten. So I want to lighten parts of my image. I've got my perfect brush on. And when I go ahead and use this brush, I'll just go ahead and I'll start clicking and dragging on the walls. You'll see that it's only lightening the wall that I'm painting over. It's selecting all of that color and tone information from the center of my brush tool, and it's making sure that it only affects those areas. So I can click and drag kind of over whole areas here, and it's only going to lighten the parts that I'm clicking over, which is really cool. So this allows you to be a little bit more selective about which parts of the photo you want to lighten or darken. And you can use this perfect brush pretty much across the map inside Perfect Black and White. So you'll see I can swap my mode over to darken, and I could darken parts of my image. Underneath, we've got the contrast brush, which allows you to increase contrast in certain areas, which is really cool. And right up at the top, we've got that perfect brush. And then underneath, the last brush, and probably my favorite brush, is the detail brush. And it allows you to go in and basically selectively choose which parts of the image you want to add a little bit more detail to. And I always really like to use this kind of right at the end. I'll go ahead and I'll take my amount, and I'm going to raise it up quite a bit so you guys can really see what this brush does. We'll make the brush nice and big, and I'm just going to click and drag over kind of that gritty wall and all the bricks. And you'll see all of those little details are starting to pop out a little bit. And with that perfect brush, I'm not that worried that it's going to bleed into any areas I don't want. So we'll go ahead and we'll click and we'll paint over the bottom. So that detail brush usually I use kind of right at the end, which is really nice. Now on the right-hand side in Perfect Black and White, there are all these other panes that I haven't even talked about yet. You've got a glow pane. This image has kind of a nice soft glow to it. You can add film grain, real authentic film grain. We actually went in and scanned film negatives. You can add a toner like this photo here. You can add a vignette. You can add a film inspired border. You can even finish your image off with sharpening, which is really cool. So if this is going to be your last stop and you want to get this ready to print, you can even just do some really nice universal sharpening here in Perfect Black and White as well. Now, before I leave Perfect Black and White, if I tweaked anything in any of these panes on the right-hand side, I always want to make sure I save this as a preset. So just like we did in Perfect Effects, I'll go ahead and select Save Preset. We'll add Wedding Calotype as my preset name. I can select a category here if I want to. So we'll go ahead and we'll add a new category and we'll call it Wedding Presets. I can type in a creator and my description. And once I go ahead and click on create, it's just going to pop over to my presets library. And now the next time I come into Perfect Black and White, I can reuse that wedding calotype preset that I had just created. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this image. And I want to move on and talk to you about Perfect Portrait. Now, Perfect Portrait is our portrait editing software. And what it does is when you place an image inside Perfect Portrait, it has automatic face recognition. So it's going to figure out where the face is, and then it's going to go in and it's going to apply an automatic amount of skin smoothing and blemish removal. Plus, it's going to have instant enhancements of the eyes and the teeth without really having to do anything. You just pop your image in there, it's going to select the face, and then it's going to add these kind of basic enhancements for you. Now, the other really cool thing is you can also customize retouching for every face in an image. So if you have two different people, it allows you to select each one of them and edit them separately. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into another image that will pop into Perfect Portrait. So I'll go up to my File menu, go down to Plugin Extras, and select Perfect Portrait. Now, once inside Perfect Portrait, what it's going to do is it's going to, just like I said, automatically find where that face is, and it's going to place a green box around the face. So you'll see it's setting it up, place that green box around your face, and then what I want to do is I want to click inside that box, and it's going to show me the control points that it's placed around the eyes and the mouth. And you'll see for this image, it did a really, really good job of figuring out where the eyes and the mouth are. You can always go in and you can change any of these control points if you want to, just by clicking and dragging any of these points. So I want to make sure that I select all of the whites of the teeth there, and I might want to drag out this just a little bit so I can make sure I get all the whites of the eyes. And then once I'm done selecting, I'm going to go up and click on Hide Controls. And now I don't have to stare at those controls while I'm making any more edits. So on the right-hand side, this is where I'm going to make any skin retouching changes. And you'll see it already automatically upped the blemish removal and the skin smoothing, but if I want to, I can always go in and edit those a little bit more. So for this image, I might add just a little bit more smoothing to kind of soften her skin. Underneath, you've got things like shine removal, which can be really helpful for studio portraits. You also have one of my favorite sliders, which is the evenness slider. And if you have someone who has kind of red blotchy skin, if you take this slider and move it over to the right, what it does is it kind of reduces the color variance in skin tone. So it's going to soften all of those reds and kind of blend them into the rest of the skin, which is really nice. Next, you've got your color correction pane, which allows you to color correct your image based on skin tone instead of white point. And then last, you've got your eyes and mouth pane. And again, it's already applied some baseline amount of adjustments for me. It's already whitened the whites of the eyes, which I'm not going to do anymore. And then it's also added just a little bit of detail to the irises of the eye. However, I like to take the detail slider and kind of move it over to the right, and you'll see it adds a little bit of contrast and saturation into those irises and really makes them pop. It's already whitened the teeth for me, as you can see. Sometimes I like to go down just a little bit with the teeth whitening because it looks a little overboard. That 50% is usually too strong for me. So I like to go down just a tad with that. And then last, you've got a vibrance slider. And the vibrance slider basically just goes in and adds a little bit more vibrance to the lip color. So if you had someone who had kind of a dull lipstick color on, you can brighten that up with that slider. Now, once we've done kind of those baseline adjustments, the next thing I need to do is just finish off a couple of these blemishes that you can see right here. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to select my retouch brush. And the retouch brush is going to allow me to get rid of any of those excess pimples or spots on her face that might not have gone away with the blemish and the smoothing sliders on the right-hand side. So once I have it selected, all I need to do is just click and drag over those spots and it's going to get rid of them for me. Now, one of the cool things about the retouch brush is you can use it anywhere in the image. So you'll see she's got a blemish right down here on her collarbone, and instead of having to go in and use a different program, this retouch brush works universally across the entire image. So I can just click and drag down here and I can get rid of that blemish as well. Now, the last thing I want to do with this retouch brush is I want to remove the under eye circles. Now, if I use this brush at 100%, it's going to remove the under eye circles completely, and she's going to start to look a little fake. So a lot of times what I like to do is go up to that opacity slider there, and I just lower it down to about 40%. And it just softens the brush a little bit, so it's not quite so harsh when I remove those under eyes. So I'll make my brush just a little bit bigger, and I'll just click and drag, and you'll see it's kind of softening that darker color underneath her eyes. You can use it a couple of times to soften just a little bit more. So we'll run through twice. And now she still has just a little bit of depth and dimension underneath her eyes, so she doesn't end up looking like a doll, but it's a lot softer so that her skin looks a lot nicer. Now, once I'm finished inside Perfect Portrait, the last thing I want to do is save this as a preset. Now, it seems weird at first. Why would you create presets inside Perfect Portrait? However, it's really cool. If you have a whole bunch of images of the same person, so this is a studio shot, and there are probably a lot of pictures that were taken of her in the same day, we've made a whole bunch of changes on the right-hand side to all of these different sliders in the skin retouching and the eyes and mouth panes. And when I upload another image of her that I might have to edit, I want to make sure that all those changes are the same. So by saving this as a preset, I can make sure that all those sliders will be exact and all of the portraits are going to be nice and streamlined, and they're going to look like they were all edited at the same time. So I can go ahead and I can give this preset a name. So I might type in the name of the girl. I can place it in a specific category. And I can also type in a creator and a description just like we've done before. Now, once I click on create, it'll pop up into my presets library on the left-hand side. So when I add another image of her, I can just add that exact same preset, and I don't have to worry about trying to memorize any of these sliders or numbers. So that's a quick overview of how to use Perfect Portrait. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move on and talk to you about Perfect Mask. Now, Perfect Mask allows you to basically go into a photo and remove backgrounds with just a couple of clicks. It allows you to cut out parts of your image without having to go into Photoshop. So if you're a Lightroom or Aperture user, being able to cut out backgrounds is something that you don't have access to. So Perfect Mask allows you to do that. And what's really cool is we've actually included a whole bunch of backgrounds into the photo suite that you can end up using. So if you don't have one that you want to use, whether it be an indoor one or whether it be a brand new sky, if you were photographing something and it had kind of a boring sky, you want to replace it with something a little bit more interesting, you can also use some of the backgrounds that we've included in the suite, which is really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use Perfect Mask. So once I've got my image selected, I'll just go up to the File menu, go down to Plugin Extras, and I'm going to select Perfect Mask. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to pop me into Perfect Layers first. And the reason why it does that is, hopefully you guys are Lightroom and Aperture users. If you're watching Lightroom and Aperture webinar, if you're using either of those programs, you don't have access to a layer stack, which means you don't have access to placing in a new background. So the reason why it pops into Perfect Layers first is so that you can put in a new background. So we have this really boring gradient sky. It's not very exciting. We want to place in kind of a cool cloudy sky that gives it a little bit more interest. So you'll see on the right-hand side in my layer stack, I've got my photo layer right up here on top, and then right underneath it, I have a new sky layer that I've already placed in here. Now, if you don't already have a sky layer, all you need to do is go to the left-hand side, and you've got a browser here where you can search through your own photos on your own computer. So if you've got a new sky that you want to use, you can select it from the browser on the left-hand side. You can also go to the Extras category right here. So if I open up Extras, I'll go to the Backgrounds category, and I'm going to scroll down to Skies, and you'll see these are all of the high-res JPEGs that are included that I can use as brand new skies. So again, if you don't have one of your own, you can just use one of ours. And when you find one that you really like, so I kind of like this cool cloudy one right here, I'll just double click on that image, and then I'll select Add. I want to add this as a brand new layer. And now I've got my brand new sky background, and all I would need to do is just click and drag this underneath my photo layer, and now I've got my brand new sky. So it's really easy to just double click, add your new sky as a brand new layer, and then you can go into Perfect Mask. And I always suggest that you add a new background before you go into Perfect Mask so you can see what your photo is going to look like on your new background. So now I'm just going to go up and click on Mask. Now inside Perfect Mask, the first tool I'm going to use is something called the drop brush. And the drop brush is going to tell the computer, it's going to tell the program which part of the image I want to drop out or get rid of. And the drop brush works on color segmentation. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to click and drag along this background here that I want to get rid of, and it's gone in, and what it's done is it's selected all of the colors that are related and continuous with the ones that I just painted over. So that whole kind of blue background, it just removed it all together. Now, if you have an image where you've got a person with a green shirt on and they're up against a green background and there's just a whole bunch of green in the image, you got to remember that the program works on that color segmentation. So if the colors are going to be a little too close, what you might want to do is go up to the tool options bar right up here at the top and lower your segment size. And that's going to allow you to be a little bit more specific about the colors you get rid of. This was a really simple blue gradient, so I could keep this at a larger number like 8, and I don't have to worry about it removing anything else. However, if you're having problems and you've got an image with colors that are a little bit more similar, just take that segment size and move it over to 1 or 2 or 3. So move it over to a lower number, and sometimes that'll help. Now, once I've done the bulk of the background, the next thing I need to do is I need to get rid of some of this excess down here through like the car windshield and some of these trees down here. You can still see some of that background. So if I use this drop brush, it's going to remove all the colors I paint over, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to swap over and I'm going to use something called the Magic Brush tool. And the Magic Brush tool is going to access that same color information. So when I click on the background, so we'll just click right here where the original background was, and I drag through those trees, you'll see it's removing all of that excess color information that I don't want, and it's leaving everything else alone. So I can just click and I can kind of drag this through whichever parts of the photo I need to clean up a little bit. So see, I'm just coming through and I'm kind of cleaning up some of those trees. And now it's done a really nice job of kind of removing the last of that background. Now, the last tool that I want to use is something called the chisel tool. And sometimes it's hard to see at first, but a lot of times when you're looking at a mask and you look at it up close, you can see that there's still a little bit of the leftover background color information right around the edge of the mask. And you can see it kind of around the top of this billboard and around some of these trees. So we have something called the chisel tool that allows you to go in and basically chisel away the last little pixel edge around your mask. So once I have it selected, all I need to do is just click and drag, and you'll see it's removing that layer of pixels right along the top of that billboard. And any excess color information that was there is now gone. Now, what's even cooler about this brush is I can click and drag just like I'm doing right now, or I can just double click my chisel tool and it removes that pixel amount around my entire mask edge. And it can be a really quick way to finish off your mask. Now, once I'm done in Perfect Mask and I click on Apply, it's actually going to pop me into Perfect Layers again. And the reason why it does that is now if I want to, I can edit my background layer just a little bit more. So if I wanted to, I could move my background around. So I selected my sky layer and I'll go and choose my Transform tool. And let's go ahead and we'll move it around a little bit. And I'm just going to click and maybe drag it out and make it a little bit bigger. I want those clouds to look a little bit larger. So I can go in and I can make any changes to that background. I can click apply and I can save my image. And now I've got my brand new composite. So that's an overview of how to use Perfect Mask. The next thing I want to talk to you about is Perfect Layers. And I've been using it a little bit through this entire demo. We used it with Perfect Effects. We used it with Perfect Mask. Perfect Layers has so many possibilities to it, especially if you're a user of Lightroom and Aperture. It allows you to extend the editing power of those programs and allows you to combine multiple images together. So instead of having to go into Photoshop for a layered workflow, you have one inside of Perfect Layers so that you can composite, for example, these 3 images into one. So you can also go in and you can do things like combine multiple exposures. So if you're a landscape photographer and you do one for the foreground and one for the background, you can combine 2 images or 3 images or 4 images together to create that perfect exposure. Now, Perfect Layers has so many possibilities. I've showed you how to combine a new background with a new foreground. I want to show you how to add a texture inside Perfect Layers. And this is something a lot of people really like to do. So we've got 2 images here. We've got one of this girl's cowboy boots, and I want to apply this texture that was photographed to these cowboy boots. And it's really, really easy to do that. If you photograph your own textures and you want to apply them to your images, all you need to do is select your texture, select your photo layer, and then go up to the File menu, go down to Plugin Extras and select Perfect Layers from there. And what it's going to do is it's going to pop me into Perfect Layers and it's going to place both of those images on separate layers. So now you'll see that texture is right on top of the boots photo. All I need to do is just change my blending mode over to, so I can scroll through and I can find a blending mode that I might want to apply. And you'll see what's really cool about the blending mode drop-down menu is it shows you live previews of what they're actually going to look like on your image, which is awesome. So I know I'm probably not going to go into this category. I'm going to go down and I'm going to select either overlay and soft light. So I'm going to choose overlay. I can lower the opacity of this layer if the texture is a little too strong. So we'll just click and drag that down just a bit. And the other cool thing that you can do is you can also mask out part of the texture. And you can use these masking tools in whatever composites you're creating. For this image, I want to remove the texture from her dress. I don't really like how it looks on the white. So I can go over and I can just select my masking brush here. You'll see I have access to that perfect brush, that edge detection brush there, and I can go in and I can just start painting out a part of the image that I don't necessarily want to have affected by that texture. So it's really, really easy to go in and composite images together. As you can see here, you can use one of your own textures, or if you go over to the extras category, there's the backgrounds one that I just showed you. There's also a textures category here as well. So you can play around with the textures that we have included in the suite too. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that image there. And I want to talk to you about focal point. And this one I'm not going to show you how to use. I'm just going to talk to you about really quick. It allows you to put the focus in the photo wherever you want it and control the depth of field after you've already shot the photo. So you can simulate the look of a whole bunch of expensive lenses that you may not necessarily want to go out and shell out the cash for, including the ever popular tilt shift lens, which I know a lot of people would love to own, including myself, but can't necessarily go out and get, or don't necessarily want to use all the time. You can play around with it inside focal point, which is really cool. Plus you have access to enhancing things like highlights and contrast in parts of your image. So we can go into a photo like this and we can minimize the distractions in the foreground and the background, and we can pull the focus into the part that's the most important, which is that beautiful bridge right in the center of the photo. And you'll see you've got that beautiful highlight bloom in the background that brings out all of those pretty city lights. Now, the last program inside the photo suite, but definitely not the least, it's definitely one of my favorite programs and I always like to talk about, is Perfect Resize. Perfect Resize is the industry standard for image resizing. So if you need to prepare images for print, this is going to be the program that you're going to want to use. And we've got a brand new library of presets and resizing options that makes it a lot easier to get in and out of the program really quickly. And as you can see here, one of the best parts about Perfect Resize is we have an algorithm that allows you to go in and resize your image, but also maintain sharpness and detail. So on the left-hand side, you'll see we've got that soft fuzz. You lost a lot of the detail around the edges of the image. And then on the right-hand side, we upsize with Perfect Resize, and you get those really nice, crisp, clean lines between all the different parts of the photo. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to show you how Perfect Resize works. We'll open up an image here, and we'll just right-click, edit in, and go to Perfect Resize. Now, this image here pops open into Perfect Resize. On the right-hand side, you've got the document size pane. And this is where you're going to see when you first open an image, this is where you're going to see what size your photo actually is. And mine's about 8 by 5.5, which is not a very large photo. I want to be able to give this to the family, and I want to be able to print it out at like 16 by 20. I want it nice and big so they can hang it on their wall. Now, I've got two different ways I can do that. I can go in and I can just type in a brand new size right here. So if I know I want to change my width over to 16, you'll see it's not 16 by 20, it's 16 by 24, but I can really quickly upsize just by typing in a brand new number. And then once I click on apply, it's going to export me and get me out of Perfect Resize with my brand new number. Now on the left-hand side, I can also go in and I can select one of the presets here in the library. So I know that I'm going to be printing this on an Epson printer. It's the one I have at home. I know that I really like to print on matte paper. That's my favorite. So I'm just going to go up to the Epson matte category and I'll pop that open. And you'll see it's got all of these different sizes and they're presets that are specific for Epson matte. So if that's what you're going to be printing on, like I know I'm going to be, I'll just go straight to that category. And then right down here, we'll go to Epson matte 16 by 20. It's going to place a crop box on the image because I'm going to need to crop my photo down just a little bit. It adds just a tiny amount of sharpening because I know I'm going to have to sharpen my image before I print it. And when I click apply, I'm good to go. I can resize this crop box if I want to. I can move it around if I need to. Whatever I want to do before I get out of Perfect Resize. So as you can see, it's really easy. You can either resize on the right-hand side in that document size pane, or you can go over and you can just select a preset. And one of the cool things is I use 16 by 20 paper all the time, so I can just save this as a preset or as a favorite, and I can pop over to my favorites library, and I know the next time I've got an image of maybe the same family, I want to resize it to the same, with the same size, with the same crop box, with the same sharpening amount. I can use this preset again the next time I open up another image. So presets, just like in all the other programs, are some of the best ways to work inside Perfect Resize. And that favorites library is really, really helpful. So that's a super quick overview of how to use Perfect Resize. Now, if you're interested in getting the suite, or you have it and you didn't know that there are all these super cool things that you can do, you can install the suite onto two different machines. So if you've got it and you've got it maybe on your home computer, you can also maybe install it on your work computer, although that could be dangerous because you could be like me and you could be in the suite editing for hours when you should be working. You can install it on a Mac or Windows. So if you've got maybe a Mac at home and a Windows at work, it doesn't matter, it'll work on both programs. As you saw while I was working in there, we've got a brand new integrated module selector. So I used Perfect Layers with Perfect Mask. I used Perfect Layers with Perfect Effects. You can use all these different programs together, which is really helpful. So instead of having to go in and out of Lightroom with each one of those modules, you can just play around with all of them together, which is really great. We also have access to things like batch processing. So if you've got a whole bunch of images and you've got a really cool preset you want to apply to all of them, you can batch process your images really quickly with the same preset. You also have access to our 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you use the software for a couple of weeks and it's not really what you're looking for, you can always let us know. We also have free US-based tech support. So if you're having a problem with the suite maybe and you need some help, you want to talk to someone about why something isn't working, you can go ahead and give us a call. We're based here in Portland, Oregon, so you're going to get somebody on the other line and you can talk to us and we can show you maybe what might be going wrong. Now, we also have our On1 Software training site. So if you visit on1software.com, you can have free access to all of our training and tutorial content. It's hundreds of hours. So maybe if there's a specific module you're having problems with, if you want to know how to use that tool in Perfect Mask better or what this means inside Perfect Resize, you can go in and you can separate all the videos down by different modules, which can be really helpful. Plus, you can have access to watching free archived webinars like this one. So if you want to go in and watch training just like this, you can watch all those archived webinars. You also have access to our Perfect Inspiration, which is a free weekly series, and it allows you to kind of see how other photographers and industry pros are working with the suite in a creative way. So it can be really fun to see how these different photographers like to use the suite, what programs they use. We've got one up right now by Matt Kliskowski, and he talks about how to create really great family portraits and how to edit them inside the suite. So that would be really cool to watch. Plus, you get a free preset every single week. So whatever program that person used, you get a free preset so you can actually use what they're using in the suite. Now, if you're interested in getting it or you're interested in upgrading from an older version of the suite, we have a really awesome special online right now. If you visit on1software.com, the Lightroom and Aperture edition is usually $150, which can be a little expensive. However, we have an awesome special so that you can buy the Lightroom and Aperture edition, which includes all 7 of those different products for $99.95. So $50 off. It'll automatically apply that coupon code for you when you add it to your cart. So it's really easy. You just click add and you have that $50 off. So if you haven't really made the jump to buy the suite yet, this is definitely going to be one of the best times to do that.